everybody. In this video, I'm going to be doing an update on my Gillio Appunto Trifold in the A6 size, which is this A6 leather folio right here. And I'm going to be showing you how I'm using it as a ring binder and using it to house my ink journal. I affectionately call this my Ringppunto because it's a combination of a ring binder and an appunto. And that was not the way that the appunto was designed to be used, but it is possible to be used as a ring binder. I will try to split this video into two main topics. The first part, I will go into the contents of the ink journal. And the second part of the video, I'm going to explain my thoughts on using this appunto as a ring binder and the pros and cons of doing so. Next, I'm going to go into my experience with using a ring binder inside this A6 Appunto Trifold. I will go over some of the things that I noticed in my previous video, and that is that this is an A6 size piece of paper that is hole punched using the pocket ring sizing, because the binder here is not an A6 ring binder, it's a pocket ring binder. And the pocket size is much smaller than an A6 size. This is the pocket size, and this is the A6 size, not this one. And that means that the rings weren't designed to be used for such a big piece of paper. It was meant to work with a smaller paper. And it means that the ring mechanism here is shorter than the piece of paper that it's holding right now. And you know, when you open up the rings, you're supposed to push down on these little tabs here. Instead of just pulling the rings open like this, you're supposed to open it like that. And let me show you how you can open it with a bigger piece of paper, because it happens that the paper, being too big, will lie on top of the tab. All right, so when you're trying to open this, you can't actually see what where the tab is, but it still works. You can still just press down here and you can open the ring binder, and it's no different. But I did want to point that out because the paper does sit on top of the tab. And I've noticed that one or two times already, what happens is the paper, if you flip through the pages in certain ways, the paper, let's see, even this cover here, it gets caught underneath the tab. I don't know if you can see that here. It's caught underneath there, and that means when you flip it over, sometimes it's kind of awkward, and then you need to, that wasn't a good example, but sometimes you need to lift up the paper in a certain angle so that it gets out of that tab where it gets caught. And I said in my other video that this Appunto Trifold was not meant to hold rings and A6 size inserts. It just happens that this particular design allows for it, but then it's also a very narrow fit. When I close this, you can see that the paper sticks out over here, and I think it shouldn't, but it doesn't matter that it does because of this flap. When you close it, and then you look at the top here, you'll see that the rings and the paper fit inside this Appunto Trifold just fine, and the paper does not touch the edge of this Appunto Trifold, but it is very close. It almost touches. I think you can see that, and that means you cannot use the pen loop, and you cannot have any side tabs. Now that's fine because you can use the top tabs like I've done here, and you can use bottom tabs if you really wanted to. Another thing you should think of is the rings. I tried to measure this. I think the rings are something like 12 to 13 millimeters, and that's quite small. I would say this is something akin to an A6 Ringppunto, if that actually exists. And unfortunately, I don't have any companions in any size to compare it to. But because of the smaller rings, then you cannot fit as much here. But otherwise, if you can get past, let's say, not using the side tabs and not having space for this pen loop, I really do enjoy this setup. Now there are some benefits to this. I like that it's compact because I don't need to stuff it. I like that even though I can't use side tabs, there is room for the top tabs or the bottom tabs. And I also like that I can, if I wanted to use this Appunto Trifold as a leather folio again, I can just take out the ring binder and it won't have affected the leather cover. I can also store this set of paper separately too with the ring binder, because I really like the A6 insert size over the personal size. That was a big surprise to me because I've been using the personal ring size planner for a long time. And I'm not currently using it now. I haven't been using it for a while. But for a long time before, I had been using that size. And that is a very common size where a lot of different companies offer the size rings in personal. Here is my personal ring binder, which is a Filofax Finsbury. And it's almost the same size as this, just a little bit taller. So this is the Appunto Trifold, and this is the Finsbury. And when you put them together, they're about the same width. Of course, height-wise, the personal is a lot taller. But when you look at the insert size, I quite like the proportions of the A6 over the personal. And that's all personal preference, of course. So here's the A6 size, and here is some personal size Filofax insert. And again, it's also taller than the A6 size. It's almost like the A6 size page. It's the same width as the personal size, but with space for the rings. If you look at the personal here, there's space for the rings. So the amount of writing space that you have is really limited to this, like that. And I find that extra little bit of writing space from the A6 to the personal size makes a huge difference for me. So even though the A6 size is shorter, as long as I can write more width-wise, then I prefer it a lot more. And that's because I have bigger handwriting. And I constantly, when I was in the personal size, I felt like I was writing a sentence and I get to the end of that piece of paper and I still want to keep on writing, but then there's no more room. And even though it's not much more room on an A6, it still makes a big difference in my personal opinion and my personal writing style, I suppose. And so I was trying to figure out if I were to, in the future, move from this pocket ring binder A6 setup to an actual A6 ring binder, could I do that and still keep all of this content? Because otherwise then I'd have to redo everything and then repunch it and put it into my A6 binder. Or at least I didn't want to redo everything and re-swatch everything, right? And I think that's possible because here's that A6 size piece of paper, which I have hole punched to the A6 ring spacing. And they don't line up with the pocket ring spacing. But I think that if I were to take this page that is hole punched, oh, let me just show you here. I wonder if you can see that the plastic got caught under the tab again, like I was showing before. So you do kind of have to lift it up and out. Anyways, what I was saying was, I think that I could be able to take this piece of paper, which has been hole punched to the pocket ring spacing, and then punch it again to the A6 ring spacing, and then it would still work. All of these A6 ring holes don't line up with the pocket ring holes. So if I were to punch this with the A6 ring spacing, I would just have a lot more holes. And then I would be able to put it in an A6 ring binder. And I'm encouraged by that because then I could make this more future-proof if I ever decide to move out of this pocket ring binder into an actual A6 ring binder. So that's it for my video. If you have any questions about the ink journal, if you even have any suggestions about how I can set up my ink journal, I would appreciate that. If you have any questions about how I'm using my ring journal inside this Appunto, you can always ask me as well. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.